President Obama is in the news. He was on the Mark Maron podcast. It was the show's final episode. He talked about a number of things, including what he thinks about Trump using the National Guard in places like Portland and Chicago. Here's just a little bit of the conversation.
When you see an administration suggest that ordinary street crime is an insurrection or
a terrorist act,
yeah, that is a genuine effort to weaken how we have understood democracy.
So, Tom, he talked about a bunch of things. That was just part of it. He talked about his marriage, among other interesting topics. What did you make of the podcast, and what do you make of Obama's views of Trump right now?
Well, obviously, he can't stand Trump. And that was clear. And he had this comment where he said, look, everything that Michelle and I stood for, Trump came in and my predecessor stands for the opposite. He's undone. I mean, there was the sense that Obama feels like Trump has undone his legacy and that things didn't work out. Obama was going to be transformational, right? He was the savior. He was going to heal the planet and reduce the sea levels. And I mean, he was.
They gave him a Nobel Peace Prize on spec.
They gave him a Nobel Peace Prize for just showing up. I mean, talk about a participation trophy. But no, you can definitely see there's this sense that I don't know if it's jealousy that he thinks that Trump has turned out to be more consequential than he was, and he thought he was going to be the consequential one and the transformational one. It turns out maybe that's Donald Trump, or that he's undone his legacy. He was lamenting that we don't have a parliamentary system, which I thought was kind of interesting as well. So that there was no heir apparent for the Democrats. And so he had to get dragged back into day-to-day politics, more than he wanted to. And, the Democrats just couldn't survive without him. I mean, there was an awful lot to this podcast that gave you an insight into where Obama was. And this last thing about, regular street crime, I thought that was so glib. I mean, his city, his home city of Chicago, which has been my hometown for now 25 years, which is longer than I've lived anywhere else, has suffered.
I still think of you as a Seattle guy, Tom.
I know, but I'm a Midwesterner now. I've married a girl from Wisconsin. It's over. But the city of Chicago has suffered so greatly over the last 20 years. And from the crime and the murder and the shootings and the carjackings and all these things. And yes, crime has come down in the last couple of years from where it was in 2020 and 2021 when it was, kind of out of control. But, and there was talk when Obama was president, like there was never any effort to help his hometown. There was talk of sending in the National Guard from time to time. Again, Democratic governors. It never happened. There was, we would see these terrible, mass shootings that would happen. And Barack Obama never did anything about it. And so for him to just sit there and say, well, this, it's just regular street crime. And, Trump's trying to undermine, I found that to just be astonishingly glib and really sort of tin-eared.
Carl, what'd you make the exchange?
I'll say what I think Obama's trying to do there in a moment, but I want to agree with Tom about the crime comment. He said that Trump was using street crime as but his real effort was to undermine democracy. And I can't believe he really even thinks that, but maybe he does. But he said street crime the way you and I might say jaywalking. But President Trump isn't talking about jaywalking. He's talking about thousands of lives that have been lost. In Chicago alone, over the period of time since Barack Obama entered politics, there have probably been, I'm doing the math just quickly off the top of my head, but between 10 and 12,000 young people killed in violent crime, most of them Black and most of them young. It is a scourge. It is a terrible thing. And 4 or 5 times that many shot and wounded, some of them grievously. And if Democrats care about they care about young people, if they care about African Americans, if they care about their cities, this is something they should be really focused on. And you have one of these people.
Black Lives Matter.
If Black Lives Matter, J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson and Obama and the whole Democratic Party leadership, they say similar things about this. When what Trump is trying, I was thinking of this. Hillary Clinton said that, Donald Trump would start wars. And, she was sincere about that. He seems such a bellicose, ignorant person to her. She was speaking from the heart. But Trump never saw himself that way. He sees himself as a person who ends wars. We know that. Well, in this case, they're saying that Trump's a racist, Trump's, an authoritarian, and Trump sees himself as somebody who's trying to save lives. And I think the Democrats, and starting with Obama, would be better served, and the country better served, if they acknowledge that and talked about it, and then explain the policy differences they have with him and why they think this is not the answer to the question. Because even thoughtful Democrats, not knee-jerk Democrats, have problems with this National Guard thing. They don't think this is any kind of sustainable way to deal with criminal justice, but they ought to acknowledge the underlying facts here that Tom's talking about. And so I was struck by that as well. In terms of the overall interview, Andy, I don't hold it against former President Obama that he lashes out at Trump. Trump does the same to him constantly. They have very different worldviews. They have very different ideas of how you govern. They have very, very different, political sensibilities. And that aside about the parliamentary system, it's kind of nonsensical, but it's why Obama's saying he's inserting himself back into the fray the way George W. Bush has not. And Obama's clearly conscious of this because Bill Clinton couldn't step aside. His wife wanted to be president, so he's still in the fray. But Bush has behaved the way normally we expect a former president to behave, above it. And Obama isn't, and he's trying to excuse that. And he's trying to say, basically, I have to do it because our party doesn't really have a leader. He didn't phrase it that way. And because this guy, Trump, is such a menace to everything I believe in. I think he's sincere about that, though.
Yeah, it was implicit in the interview that he's there because there's a vacuum at the top of the leadership. But we have to talk about what everyone really wanted to hear about, and that's his relationship with Michelle Obama, because she has spoken out and said some weird things on her podcast about him. She said that she doesn't like the way he chews his food, which to a lot of husbands who've been married for a while might sound familiar. She said she didn't like raising her kids between the ages of 1 and 12. He said this. He said, I had a big deficit with my wife. This was after he left the office. I had to kind of work my way out of, right? We went on a lot of trips. We hung out and had nice dinners and slept in. So sounds like maybe from his point of view, Tom, he's making all the right moves, and maybe Michelle's not buying. What do you think?
He's out of the doghouse? I don't know. Sounds like me after I go golfing a couple times. I gotta earn some credits back. No, look, I don't really care about Obama's marriage. I know it's a topic.
You're the only person who doesn't, but go ahead. Yeah.
I apparently I don't, but let me just take this opportunity to say one other thing about Barack Obama and the comment of the parliamentary thing and him being drawn back into politics. Obama was a phenomenon. I mean, this guy was a meteor in sort of the political universe. And from state senator to senator for a minute to presidential candidate. And he was very good at getting himself elected and reelected. But I think what is missed in sort of the broader context is beyond that, he presided over a decimation of the Democratic Party in the Senate, in the House, in state legislatures around the country. Democrats got obliterated during his tenure. Even while he was winning re-election, to the presidency. And so when he left office, the Democratic Party was in shambles, and he had taken all of it. He had hoovered up all this information. Remember Obama for America, all the donors, the DNC, like the shelves were bare, the cupboards were bare because Obama's organization had basically taking control of all of this information, and it left them in a real disadvantaged position, and one that they're still, I think, in some ways struggling to recover from.
Well, that's right. But let's take the lens back a little bit. It was Democrats complaining at that time that it was like this cult of personality, that it was all about Obama, not the party. And the party wasn't destroyed and decimated. Tom's overstating it, I think, but the money wasn't there. The majorities weren't there. You had this loss of momentum in the party, but Obama was still beloved. Well, this is very similar to what you hear complaints about from mainstream Republicans about Donald Trump, that it's the cult of personality. That's the phrase Lynn Cheney used about Trump. And my guess is if we had good enough technology, we could go back, she might have said the same thing about Barack Obama, but certainly people close to her did. And so in one sense, Obama doesn't like Trump because they're similar in ways. You know, Tom mentioned this guy was a state senator. I'd never heard of him till he gave a speech at the Democratic convention that nominated John Kerry in 2004 in Boston. He was a prodigious, electrifying speaker and an obvious political talent, a superstar. You could just see that. But he wasn't ready to be president. He had not done any of the things that previous presidents had done. He'd not been a governor. He'd been a senator for a few hours before he started running for president. He had no major legislation to his name. The only things he did in the Senate were destructive. He almost single-handedly killed a deal that would have given Dreamers citizenship because he didn't want John McCain and George W. Bush to get credit for it. He had never run a business. He'd never been a general. He'd never done he'd never had any executive experience whatsoever. Then along comes Donald Trump. Even less experience, even less of credentials. The guy had never run for dog catcher. He had no business running for president. So you have these two guys.
Hold on, really less credentials than he ran a multi-billion-dollar business.
He'd never even been on a city council, Tom. He knew nothing about government. He didn't see.
I agree with that, but he was an executive of a major company. I mean, that's something. Obama didn't run a lemonade stand.
Well, yeah, okay. I said that he had no executive experience. But my point is that these two guys, both of them, by traditional standards, didn't have the chops to be president, and yet they both, they won 4 terms between them. And if you believe Trump believes they won 5 terms between them. So, they're a new kind of politician, but from opposite ends of the spectrum, and so you really wouldn't expect them to be friends. Frenemies is about the best they could have ever hoped for, I think.
Yeah.